It says admit all. Okay.
Yeah, that's okay. Okay, we're live.
Everyone's admitted. Free admission.
Free admission. Okay, we're live on Facebook. Ready to go.
All right, am I good to go?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, dear Vaishnavis. We are living in unprecedented times. Personally speaking, I have experienced the passing of 6 close family members in the past month. We were so close that I used to address them as grandmother and grandfather. I have even lost my childhood doctor. Importantly, my family and I have experienced the loss of our dear spiritual father, His Holiness Bhakti Charaswami. He named me Radhika when I was born, and when visiting my home, he used to say, "I am home, this is my home." Before eating, he used to ask if I had eaten, and he used to call me princess. I am sure that if I had to ask each of you, memories of love and loss would be shared. During this time, we seek solace and comfort. So we turn to our dear uncle, Mahatma Prabhu, who is the apt person to ask, how do we cope with the passing of beloved Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis? He is initiated by Srila Prabhupada and is the dear godbrother of His Holiness Bhakti Charaswami. He lives in Alachua with his family. Mahatma Prabhu is a facilitator in Bhagavat Live, where live and recorded workshops and retreats are produced. He is the founder of Touchstone Training, a company that teaches the practices of devotional service through interactive seminars and workshops. I think I speak for all of us when I say that he is known best for his wonderful workshops on japa and forgiveness, and for his beautiful music. A warm welcome to you, Mahatma Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvisesa Sanivati Pustya Chati Dasatani Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Vanshakapatu Vishcha Kripasundavya Vicha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Kamaniya, I think I'm the one of the administrators because I'm keep letting people in.
Oh, we
So.
actually have a co-host who can take care of that, so you don't have to worry about it. Your party, though, you can let them in. It's up to you.
So I was, this morning, every Thursday morning, we do a class which is translated into Russian, specifically, obviously, for Russian devotees. And they asked me to speak on this same topic. And I have the nature that somehow, sometimes I can give 2 classes on the same thing and not say the same thing, at least not say a lot of the same thing. I don't know if that's good or bad, but I had a thought after this class that I gave this morning that I hadn't shared. And I think it may be an experience we're all having. It's a very interesting experience. And I was thinking that in this past 5 days, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, in these past 5 days, I think I felt closer to Bhakti Charaswami than I ever have in my life. And I worked with him personally when he was GBC and I was temple president. So he was, like staying in the temple next to my room and we were interacting. And to say I feel closer now, I think it makes this point of separation so clear and so interesting in that in our books everywhere, Prabhupada says this statement that sometimes drives us crazy because we can't understand it. And Prabhupada said, separation is better than meeting. When Prabhupada was leaving once, he said, separation is better. I mean, everyone's like pounding their head against the wall. And Prabhupada saying, it's actually better. It's like, we can't understand that. We don't feel that. We don't believe that. And so this last week, I was thinking, no, I really got it. I really got it because I have been so Bhakti Charaswami conscious. But not only that, this last week has inspired me with realizations about certain things. Maybe not realizations, but it's deepened my realization. And I've been inspired in my service in various ways because of things that he was inspired by. And it's having this really amazing effect on my consciousness. And I give class every day, and some devotees are saying, well, these last classes you give were like the best classes you ever gave. And it was all the inspiration of my meditation on what Maharaj stood for, who he was, what he taught. And I was starting, because I was meditating on him and who he was, I was starting to understand some things more deeply than I've ever understood. And so I'm reflecting on this and I'm thinking, this is all happening not because he's here, not because I'm talking to him, not because I went on Facebook and saw a class he gave last week. It's happening because he's not here, which is, it's like so interesting, isn't it? So then how can we say he's not here when in my life he's more present? I would say now he's more present in my life, not only in my life, but in my heart, more present than ever before, because so much of what I'm doing in my service now is directly connected to the things he wanted to see in ISKCON and the changes he wanted to see made. So it's like, there you go. There is no separation. In fact, separation makes you closer. So class is over. Nice talking to you, and Hare Krishna. So I think I have to give a whole class to get back to make this point more conclusive, perhaps, because some of you might be saying, yeah, well, that's you, but I don't feel like that. It's not me. You know, you left me here. He left me here pounding my head against the wall, beating my head against the rocks. So yes, both things are there. They had a memorial service in the UK. I don't know when was that, yesterday, day before? So on my WhatsApp, everybody sends me all the links and then I get it on my email, and there's so many I can't follow. But I started following this one, and Kripa Moya Prabhu, who is, in my opinion, one of the deepest devotees in ISKCON, and I would say one of the most underrated jewels. You know, like they have in sports, you have underrated players that are really good, but people don't recognize how good they are. He's amazing. He's just, if you read his blogs, you read his books, it's just, he's so deep. And he was saying, I think it's a South Indian Acharya said, when the Acharya dies, you honor the Acharya by preserving his teachings, by preserving his property, what he created, his movement, and preserving his memory. And I was thinking, this is so beautiful, because I was basically saying the same thing, but I never articulated it in those three divisions. I was just saying in general, how you stay close to a person is by embodying what they teach. And then, so this Acharya said, no, it's very clear. You embody what they teach, you teach what they teach, you preserve everything they did if you're working within his framework, then his temples, his books, whatever, you preserve that. And then you share what you've learned from him, and you keep that memory alive. So I've always felt that maybe one of the greatest travesties that could fall upon ISKCON is to not keep the memory alive of these great devotees who've lived. My godbrother Gunagrai Maharaj left his body a year and a half ago or so. And then Borijan Prabhu asked me to write a book. And then I said, I don't know if I have the time and the ability. And I asked Satyaraj Prabhu, can you write the book? He said it would take a year to write the book, 6 months just doing the interview. But we would need to support him, and he lives in America. So we weren't able to raise the money as of yet. And I was thinking, we can't let this great soul go without the world knowing about him, because not everyone knew about him. You in South Africa didn't know about him because he never came there. He spent most of his time in America and South America, not much in Europe, Russia, no. So those devotees don't know about him, but you should know about him. You should learn about him. You should benefit from him. And it would be such a loss that a person has done so much, has taught so much, has set so many examples, and all of you do not have access to what that person did, to the memory of that person. So that's how we glorify, that's how we serve those who have left. Now, when you serve someone who has left, that's how you remain close to them. And I'll tell you something that I learned when my father left, and I didn't know this. You know, most of you know, if you want to honor a parent or relative when they leave, you will, in 3 days after their death, you'll offer a feast to the Vaishnavas. I think that's one of the things you do. Maybe in South Africa, you have different standards or traditions because you're born Hindu, but something like that. You will do something in their honor. And so the devotee that was guiding us doing this, he was saying, actually, the reason these things are there in the Shastra is because you want to serve that person, but now they're gone and you can't serve them. And so this is how you serve them. By doing something in their honor, you still get to serve them. Because you're feeling this separation, like, how am I going to serve them now they're gone? But of course, we know for Vaishnava that once they're gone, you can still serve them by keeping their memory alive, keeping their mission alive, keeping alive in the lives of other devotees, their teachings. And when you do that, 2 people in the waiting room, I'm still the administrator. Anyway, I let them in, yeah. So, yeah, so in my personal experience, that when you live your life to preserve the memory, teachings, and glories of another person, you in a sense feel closer. And I wanted to tell a story, which I think is, it's pretty significant in the context of what we're talking about. Prabhupada traveled all over the world. He wanted to go to as many places as he could every year. And so, as you know, he traveled 12 times. And he said he was traveling so his disciples would be strong. And so most of the time that Prabhupada was here with us, I was in California. And Los Angeles was probably the temple in America he visited the most. 1970, he stayed there 7 months. Can you imagine? 7 months in one temple in America. 72, he stayed there 3 months. I was born in Los Angeles. I grew up about a 20-minute walk from the temple. And I spent some time in another temple in California, a few other temples. So I was, every time Prabhupada came to LA, basically I was there and I saw what was going on. And there were a couple of things going on that were very different. There were a group of devotees that when Prabhupada came, were just like all around him as much as possible, especially the leaders and sannyasis, like, because they had a right to be around, or at least they had access. I don't know if right is the word, but they had, if you had a danda, that was one of the, I wanted to take sannyas because once you had a danda, it was like, okay, you don't need a ticket to get in the room. You've got the danda, that's your ticket. Plus you get the Mahaprasadam and you get one servant. So it's a great deal, especially in those days, nobody had servants. So, you know, that was like as good as it gets. So sannyasis, you know, if you're a temple president, that was also your card to get in. But what we found amongst the book distributors is they didn't generally try to be around Prabhupada. They didn't generally try to get in the room. They didn't generally try to go on the walks. Of course, they would like to, but it wasn't on their mind. And then pretty much 100% of them said, even though Prabhupada is here, I feel closest to him when I'm distributing his books. I feel closer to him on Sankirtan than I do sitting in the garden with him thinking, I should be serving him. I'm just sitting doing nothing, kind of. You know, what am I doing for my Guru Maharaj? I'm just basking in his blissful presence. And they sincerely felt closer when they were further away. I had another experience. I had the opportunity to be temple president 1, 2, 3, 4 times, 3 different temples, 1 temple twice. I came back 7 years later and again became president, and then 2 other temples. And I can say I've never really felt closer to Prabhupada than when I've been temple president, because it was such a big responsibility. It was, this is like Prabhupada's temple. And you're in charge of Prabhupada's temple. That's a big responsibility. I felt extremely close to Prabhupada. And also it was the same thing when I became spiritual master. It was not like I really wanted to do it. I don't think any of our godbrothers want to do it because it's glorious and you get a lot of people to say you're great and they cook for you and they do what you want. That would be a very materialistic idea of why you want to be a guru. I think all of us were pretty reluctant to do it. And also, I was just talking to one of my godbrothers and I said, why don't you have a lot of disciples? And he said, I don't feel I'm qualified. And he's infinitely qualified to do it. And he says, I don't feel I'm qualified. So we never really felt qualified, but there was a time when people were asking me kind of that, like, if you don't initiate me, I'll jump off a bridge, that kind of thing. Like, now what do you do? Okay, go jump off the bridge, who cares? No. So, at some point in your life, you say, okay, it seems like I should do this. So it was a similar thing, like, Prabhupada, you want me to do this? I don't really want to do this, but this is something you want and it's a big responsibility. And I said, okay, I'm going to jump off the cliff into the ocean. And, if you don't save me, this is going to be a big mess. So it was a bit like that. So when you're in those situations where you're connected to this person who you want to serve, and you take some responsibility, you go out of your way to serve them, you feel very, very close to them, even closer than when they were present. And you all know the example Prabhupada gives. He said, the mosquito, he is sitting on the lap of the guru, simply biting. So what is proximity? What's the value of proximity? That they can bite you? So, okay, these are all nice words, and you're all sitting there thinking, these are all nice words, but I feel miserable now. The reality is, when a great soul leaves, we do feel miserable, and it would be wrong not to feel miserable. We had a very interesting movement because when Prabhupada left, we were young. So he's leaving this movement in the hands of people who really have very little experience materially and spiritually. And we were so confused when Prabhupada left that I was on traveling Sankirtan with a group of maybe 5, 6 devotees when we got the news. And of course, we knew the news was inevitable. It was just which day it was. It wasn't like we didn't know it was going to happen. It was just like, oh, Mahatma Prabhu, there's a phone call. It's like, okay, then you knew. It had to be this week or next week or next week. So we got the news, and then I had to bring all the devotees together. Please sit down. And it was a sad situation because we lacked the maturity of understanding what is separation and how to process it. And so the devotees they asked a question, which you will think is really weird. They asked the question, should we cry? Like, that's a strange question, isn't it? Don't you think? Okay, I'll reword it. Is it proper to cry? Is it okay to cry? Is it wrong to cry? And when I reflect back on that, I was thinking that we were so immature and perhaps not well trained that we didn't know. We thought that crying would be, oh, you're lamenting, you're in Maya, you're lamenting. And then we go to the Bhagavatam. We read this morning in the class where Prabhupada said, when the spiritual master leaves, the disciple should cry. why is Prabhupada saying that? Because that emotion of crying is just an expression of your attachment, right? An expression of material lamentation. And you know, it's almost like if you don't cry, what's wrong with you? Like you have no heart, your heart is like stone, you didn't cry, your guru left. That's why Narottam Das Thakur says, I'm banging my head on the rocks when my guru left me. I'm banging my head on the rocks. I can't take the pain of separation. So you get these two very distinct concepts of presence. I'm always with my guru. And I'm banging my head on the rocks in separation. And they're both existing simultaneously because the spiritual world doesn't exist within logical 3 dimensions. You can have intense ecstasy and intense pain at the same time. If you've gone to any celebration of the passing of a Vaisnava, and if you've gone to any disappearance day of Prabhupada, you notice something strange. We're celebrating the disappearance with ecstatic kirtan and a feast and funny stories about the person who left, and everybody's laughing and crying and dancing. And I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, this is very interesting. We're celebrating the disappearance and we're dancing. Like from the material point of view, that seems strange, right? Who would dance at the death of somebody unless you hated the person, right? So that's the nature of Krishna consciousness, that you have this pain, which simultaneously is not pain, it's pleasure and it's ecstasy, and they're all mixed up. I remember when our godbrother Tamakrishna Maharaj left, there were so many things. He was so clever and funny and sarcastic and cutting. And he was like a million people in one. And so devotees, at his disappearance, like the day after, they were telling all these amazing stories and everybody's laughing. I was like, this is really strange. We're all sitting here laughing. So what's happening is that by remembering the devotee, we're present with the devotee. And therefore we're feeling everything that they stood for and everything about them. We're feeling it very strongly. At the same time, we're feeling this absence in our life, that they're no longer there. I can't go, they're not, the person, his name is on my WhatsApp list, but I can't call him now because he's not here. That kind of separation. And then you start to realize how important that person was for you. You didn't even realize how important they were. You took it for granted. And now you realize there's no more new classes. There's no more new ideas. I can't go and ask that person a question. And you realize, oh my God, that person was so much more important for me than I ever thought. And that's what happened when Srila Prabhupada left. We knew how important he was, but we didn't really know how important he was till he left. And every year after his disappearance, when ISKCON went through new challenges, every year, those challenges magnified the reality of how much we depended on him, because we were dealing with things we didn't know how to deal with. We were confused. And we were never confused when Prabhupada was here. There was never a time we didn't know how to deal with anything because he knew how to deal with it. We didn't realize exactly we didn't know how to deal with it because he just told us and then we would deal with it. So it was hitting us every year. And then every time we'd see a new problem in ISKCON, it was just like a neon sign saying, Prabhupada's not here. That's why we have this problem. It was so obvious. This problem would never exist in Prabhupada's presence. So it was just like, separation. Prabhupada's gone. It was salt on the wound. Every problem was salt on the wound of separations. It's happening because Prabhupada's not here. So that's the other side. And then the third side, the thesis, antithesis, the synthesis was Prabhupada is only not here because we misunderstood something. And we have to bring his position in his presence and his teachings to the center, and that will synthesize. So what we didn't understand, now we understand, we bring it, and now we see, oh, Prabhupada is actually here. And we don't have to say, oh, this problem exists because Prabhupada's not here. No, this problem does not exist any longer, or it only exists because you and I are humans and we don't know how to get along, but not because Prabhupada's not here, but because we just need to be more Krishna conscious and bring Prabhupada more in our lives. And so you kind of go full circle. So all of us will say the worst day in our lives was the day Prabhupada left. Every disciple will say that. There couldn't, and you will say that also when your guru leaves. You'll say, this was the worst day of my life. There couldn't be a worse day. And then you'll start going full circle and start processing it and going deeper into his instructions and service. And some point, either the next day, the next year, 10 years, the last day of your life, you'll come back and you realize, I was always with him, he never left. And that realization, that could take a day, it could take a lifetime. It's not something you can force. But the more you follow the instructions, the more you take up responsibility to do the things that he wanted. And in this case with Bhakti Swami, we can all serve him just by being more dedicated to ISKCON, because that's what he wanted. You know, it's like we can all serve him very easily, because he was always about follow ISKCON, follow GBC, don't leave, keep Prabhupada in the center. We can all, every one of us can do that right now at every moment, right? And so we can be thinking of him all the time. If I stay in ISKCON, if we keep Prabhupada in the center, if I cooperate with my other god brothers and sisters, nieces, uncles, nephews, aunts, god uncles, god aunts, then I'm following him, and I will feel, and I can say, Maharaj, your life was not lived in vain, because when you left, you actually went in my heart more deeply than when you were present, and you live in my heart. When that happens, there's no more separation. And you will say, like I was saying, that his leaving, he didn't leave. He actually went, it seemed like he left, but he actually like came here, and he came into the hearts of so many people. So Bhakti Swami is more alive now in ISKCON, I think, than we've ever seen him alive in ISKCON. He's more present in the hearts of the devotees than ever before, isn't it? And it's so easy to serve him, because what he wants us to do is absolutely necessary to do for the health of our movement, and so important for our own Krishna consciousness. So, you know, I was going to begin this lecture in a different way, and a very, like, in a sense, depressing way. I was going to say, how do you cope with the departure of a Vaishnava? And my answer was, you don't. You never can. And say, okay, class is over. I'll see you when I see you. And in a sense, that's true. And I think it's important to realize this, that there'll be a part of you that can never cope with the passing of a Vaishnava. It doesn't matter what you do, they're just not here. And that's a reality. And I wanted to say that because you might think, well, it's someday I won't feel that way. No, don't try not to feel that way. You never cannot feel that way. You will always feel it deeply. I mean, talk to anyone who's lost their guru and say, if you had one wish and if you could give your everything, heart, soul, to have that wish fulfilled, what would it be? They would all say, my spiritual master comes back. Right? 100%, 108% devotees would say that. So that being true, then there's no question you can say that the passing of the Vaishnava, especially of your gurus, is a little thing, and or not a little thing, but something you're going to get over. You'll never get over it. You can't. It's impossible. And you shouldn't try. It would be wrong to try. And if you wake up every morning crying, crying is purifying. It's because you're attached. And you're crying because you've lost someone you're attached to. And the greatest thing that you could have, the greatest attachment you could have is attachment to a devotee. So now you're waking up crying, you're thinking of this Vaishnava, you're thinking how pure they are. And it becomes an inspiration. I need to be what Maharaj would be. I need to serve him. I need to please him. I don't want his life to go in vain. If I can imbibe what he was to some degree, if I can imbibe what he taught, then his life will not go in vain, because people will see that and they'll say, oh, Mataji, you are so dedicated to Prabhupada. You're so dedicated to ISKCON. And you'll say, I got that from Bhakti Swami. And I go, And some new devotee, who's Bhakti Charaswami? Oh, let me show you. And then they hear him talking about ISKCON and Prabhupada. They go, oh, I never heard anybody talk about Prabhupada like that. I never understood ISKCON like that. Let me explain why this is important also, just from an organizational point of view. It's common, maybe not so common, but it happens that devotees get frustrated for whatever reason within our organization. They have a bad experience and they'll say something like, I like Krishna consciousness, but I'm finished with ISKCON. Have you ever heard that? I'm over ISKCON, that would be the California way of saying, I'm so over ISKCON. It's like, it's so 1980s, I'm moving on, moving on, and I'm in Radhakund now, and just ISKCON's for neophytes, It's not always like that they're moving on into higher rasa. Sometimes they're moving on into Maya. I'm fed up with ISKCON. I want nothing to do with Krishna consciousness. They take their beads, throw their beads away, and that's it, And this is not uncommon. And in fact, I just had a disciple who wrote me that a few days ago. She said, I said, where are you? How are you doing? He says, I'm finished with ISKCON. I don't want to do it. And, because we have bad experience with a devotee or a temple president, and then that devotee or temple president tends to personify ISKCON, and we think, all ISKCON's like that, which of course is not true. But sometimes if you have enough bad experiences, then you think, yeah, it's all like that. So when you hear him talk about ISKCON, and then you realize, I can't say that, because I can't say I'm leaving ISKCON and I'm staying with Prabhupada, because if I say I'm leaving ISKCON, the next sentence has to be, and I'm leaving Prabhupada. You say, no, I'm not leaving Prabhupada. I'm just leaving ISKCON. No, you're leaving Prabhupada because you're leaving ISKCON, and Prabhupada is ISKCON. So most devotees don't think that way. But when you hear from Bhakti Charaswami, you go like, oh, okay, I never thought of it like that. Isn't it? How helpful, that could help so many devotees who never thought leaving ISKCON meant leaving Prabhupada, that ISKCON is Prabhupada. So that's why when you imbibe his instruction, it will have so much effect on other people, because the people will say, oh, I never understood that. I never thought like that before. So in that way, you're his ambassador, and that way you live with him. And of course, this is true for any devotee that leaves. And of course, true for Prabhupada and Prabhupada's mission. So how long are we supposed to go? Prabhu, as long as you want. No, that's dangerous for me. You might not get to sleep if you say as long as I want. Or I might.
We still got enough time. We have until 8. Well,
So-
8 o'clock my side. So 1 hour.
Oh my God. You're torturing me, huh? Should I continue, or you have questions you want to look at?
I can ask you one of the questions. Most of the
We have-
comments that I am receiving is
Okay.
that the devotees are saying thank you for addressing such a sensitive topic and for addressing it in the way that you are doing. And one of the questions is, Hare Krishna Prabhu, is it okay to communicate with the spiritual master in the form of letters after the spiritual master has left the world, or would
Yes.
that be considered sentimentalism?
Sentimentality? Sentimentalism?
Yes.
How did you say sentimentalism in your South African accent?
Sentimentalism.
I think you have an accent and you think I have an accent. That's a good lesson in communication, isn't it? Because I'm American and I spend a lot of time in South Africa. So every time you say a word differently, like you put an accent on a word, like on a syllable, we don't know. Okay, that's an accent, but to you, it's not an accent. When I say it, it's an accent. So two people think, anyway. The answer is no, it's not sentimentalism, and it's very good. I think it's a very beautiful practice. And actually, we're doing this when we write our Vyasa Puja offering. We're writing to any guru who we write to Prabhupada, we're writing to a departed Vaishnava. And so the idea is we don't think he's departed. Otherwise, why would you write a letter to someone? Because you think they're there and they're going to hear that, they're going to understand it. So we operate on that, in that stratosphere. No, we're writing a letter to a person because they haven't left. Spiritually, they're present. Now, this thing about sentimentalism, because this word was used in the letter, and I think it's important just to address it for a moment. I think sometimes we misunderstand sentimentalism. Sentimentalism would mean you're feeling something which that feeling doesn't align with our philosophy. So to feel is not bad, and to feel what all devotees feel, and to feel in a way that doesn't oppose our Siddhanta is not sentimentalism. Sentimentalism is like you're feeling something and there's no philosophy to back it up. I'll just feel that way, and because I feel that way, it must be true because everything I feel is true. That's human psychology, isn't it? Everything you ever been really emotionally distraught because you thought what you were feeling is the absolute truth. And you had to talk to a counselor to tell you, no, it's not actually like that. What you're feeling is, so we think everything I'm feeling is true. But, sometimes I talk to a devotee and I say, well, this is our Siddhanta. And they go, well, I don't feel it's our Siddhanta. It doesn't feel right. I go, but it is. That sentimentality is just, this doesn't feel right. But all the acharyas said, this is true. Yeah, but it doesn't feel right. That's sentimentality. But if you're experiencing something, you have emotions which correspond to, that aren't against, how do I say this? Because it's a kind of an awkward thing. You're propounding something to be true because you just feel it's true, when in fact it's not, or it may not be. That's sentimentalism. But if it's true, then it's not being sentimental. If Prabhupada can hear you, if your guru can hear you, if he's beyond the 3 dimensions, it's not sentimentalism to write a letter, it's actually Siddhanta. Right? You understand? That's our philosophy. You can, otherwise, how could we pray to Prabhupada now? He's gone. How could we pray to our spiritual master? He's gone. Like sometimes the devotees will say, the younger devotees say, Guru Maharaj, when I offer you prasadam, do you know? Do you eat it? Do you get indigestion? You got like 2,000 offerings today. No, it's not like that. When Prabhupada was asked, as far as Krishna knows your offering. So it's a principle that you're pleasing Krishna, going through the guru, asking his blessings to do this seva. And that's okay, and that's proper. And everything is good because it's our philosophy. Because otherwise you could say, how could I offer food to my guru because he's gone? If you can offer food, if you can offer prayer, certainly you can offer a letter, and it's not sentimental, but that's our philosophy. Only sentimental when it's not our philosophy. If you came in, sent me an email and said, well, I was just talking to Bhakti Charaswami, we had this amazing conversation. I go, when were you talking? Oh, yesterday. Like, okay, that's worse than sentimentalism. I think that's a mental health issue. Or you are a liberated soul. You're either mentally ill or a liberated soul. We'll have to figure out which one you are. More likely the first one than the second one, but the second one is possible, right? If you're Krishna conscious enough, it is possible. So as long as it's within the realm of our tattva, siddhanta, philosophy, then it's not sentimental if you feel that way. It's when you feel a way that has no base, you can't substantiate it with philosophy, then it's just your feeling, and that's sentimental. Like you're looking for a guru, and then so-and-so Maharaj shows up, and he looks at you, and he says, oh, Hare Krishna, are you new here? And he smiles, and you go, I knew that he's my guru. That was it, I could feel the Shakti, and, then we say to that devotee, well, you probably should think about it a little bit, because there's a whole philosophy about guru, what it means to be a disciple. That's sentimentalism, right? Okay, so I wanted to address that just so that was clear. Okay, we have another question.
Not at the moment.
Comments? Do we have any comments? Yeah.
Oh, okay. There's the question streaming in.
We can read the comments also.
Yes. How can we manage our feelings of deep regret that we didn't appreciate the beloved Vaishnava enough before they left, and we didn't seek their guidance and association more? I didn't more actively learn from them more. I still struggle with this issue 7 years after my Vratama Pradaksha Guru
Yeah.
Shamdasji left so unexpectedly in that tragic accident. I still
Yeah.
cry about it. It's such a profound loss in my devotional life.
I can express my own realization. I don't know if it's necessarily the only answer, but whenever a Vaishnava departs, I think that's one of the first three thoughts we all have. Oh, why wasn't I paying attention to this person? Why was, especially if you had the opportunity to get the association. If you didn't have the opportunity or you didn't know him, you probably wouldn't think that way. But if you did and there was opportunity, like, oh, you know, Maharaj is in Mayapurvi or I'm there, why didn't I go out of my way to spend more time? It's a total natural thought. And my processing of that was, don't make the same mistake again. So now you realize there's so many great souls, I can get their association. Don't make the same mistake I made with this great Vaishnava where I could have gotten it, but I didn't. You know, maybe it might have meant driving 3 hours and I didn't do it because that's so much trouble. Or his program was late at night and I didn't want to go. Now let me reflect on it and then don't make the same mistake again. And Kamini, I think in one of the classes I was giving, we were talking about this, how you know, the association of devotees is, especially advanced devotees, is rare. And so we don't want to take it for granted, and wherever we can get it and get as much as we can, because we don't know how long they're going to be there. We just don't know. I mean, this was sudden. The loss of Tamal Krishna Maharaj was sudden. You know, the loss of Gaur Govinda Maharaj was sudden. Many of our devotees have not given us warning. It wasn't months to their death. It was, and so, you know, if there's months, you can go there, you can get their association, you won't feel it so sorely. But when it happens like that, it's natural you're going to feel that way. I would say it's impossible not to feel that way. And that's how I processed it. All right. We don't know. Like I've been talking to my godbrothers more lately than I usually do. Of course, everybody's home, so it's easier. But, you know, when they go, knowing that they're just a WhatsApp message away and that I never took advantage of it, I would think, this godbrother is so advanced and I wasn't regularly talking to him. That was stupid. Or this Mataji, you know, senior devotee, she's so inspiring. Or someone like Mandakini who is so open and she'll give you time. Like, why did I take advantage of it? Why did I just, you know, take it for granted that they'll always be here? That's how I process it. And it's true also, because we don't know. You know, it's just like one day they're there and one day they're not there. And it's like, that's why you can't believe it, because it's like, how could they not be there? They were just there yesterday. Like, how could the soul not be in that body? It's such an unusual, like Prabhupada says, because the soul's eternal, it's so perverted is not the word. It's just so abnormal. Death is so abnormal because there's no death for the soul. So when someone dies, it's like your mind can't even process it because it doesn't make any sense that a person is not, how could that person not exist? for the soul which is eternal, there's no place in the brain for it to settle and go, oh, that makes sense. We know the philosophy, but on a deeper level, impermanence, we don't resonate with impermanence because we're permanent. So, it's like if there's a loss of a loved one, it just means, oh, they normally come home from work every day at 6 o'clock, and then they take a shower and they come in and we have dinner together and then we talk at night. It's finished. It's never going to happen again. How could you not feel, why didn't I spend more time with that person? How could you not feel that way? It's just natural. Why did I not take advantage? Or like one devotee says that she goes to the Polish Woodstock because Indradumna Swami is her guru. And she said, sometimes it's austere. She's older. She started going to the Polish Woodstock, like when it started. And she said, now I'm like 30 years older, so the Polish Woodstock, you're sleeping on the floor with 1 million people in a room and staying out till midnight chanting. It's difficult. And she said, but my thinking is, how do I know how long my Guru Maharaj is going to be here? And every year, well, this is the first year that I'm doing it, but every year they do it. So I would be stupid not to go because I can get his association. And we're like, well, this year I'm busy, I'll go next year. Well, how do you know he'll be here next year? We don't. So does that mean right now you all get on the next plane and wherever your Guru Maharaj is, just like build a mud hut and say, I'm living outside your house? Not exactly, but it means to take advantage, as much as you can while they're here. Not just your Guru Maharaj, all the great Vaishnavas, all the great devotees. Do you know you're blessed in South Africa now? Because in the old days, nobody came there. Did you know that? Well, just look at the map and see where South Africa is. Obviously, if you grew up there, look at the map. It's not on the way to India from America. It's not on the way to India from Europe. It's not on the way to India. Well, it's on the way to India if you're coming from Brazil or Argentina. But in the early days of ISKCON, there wasn't much going on down there, and probably they couldn't even afford to fly. So when I went to South Africa in 1981, I felt like a little bit like I was a prisoner on an island, like nobody came there. Like nobody. It was just us, the islanders, stuck. Then they went to Mauritius, it was even island. Nobody comes there. It's out of the way completely. And the only people that came to Mauritius were the South Africans on their way to India. So we got a little mercy once in a while. And then in later years, devotees started coming. Bhagavan came, then when Bhagavan left, more devotees came to strengthen the yatra. So Giriraj Swami started to come, Bhakti Chara Swami started to come, Krishna Das Maharaj started to come, Indradumna Swami. Then you had your stalwarts who spent years there, like Bhakti Chaitanya Swami, Parthasarathi. Then Kadamba Kanana Swami started coming. You were getting a lot of association. And the same thing happened in Mauritius. I remember once I was going to go there and they couldn't even find a time for me to go. They said, we have so many visitors. There's no time. In my period in the 80s, complete opposite. So, and I think when you have that much association, you can take it for granted. Well, yeah, Maharaj is here, but there's going to be 10 other Maharajas here, this year. So if I miss this Maharaj, I'll get that Maharaj. Isn't it? Can be. So I think that's the lesson. When you can get association, whether it's a friend or a Diksha Guru, Siksha Guru, senior devotee, advanced devotee, so-and-so's coming. Yeah, I heard so-and-so's coming. Yeah, but, his classes are okay, but, I don't think I'll go. Think again. You learn something you never knew from that Vaishnava that you wouldn't learn from anyone else, and he may never come again. So I think that's how we have to take it. But I wanted to make the point, if it's not obvious, that there's a certain kind of pain in the disappearance of someone, like what you're saying, Kamaniya. It's normal, and the pain we all experience. And Prabhupada's acknowledging cry, that pain is there. Don't try to pretend you have to transcended or there's something wrong with you because you're devastated, that's normal. And if you've studied any of my teachings, I always teach, don't run from your emotions, run into your emotions, because that's how you heal. And that's how you'll process this, by running straight into the emotion, not running away from it. And that emotion will guide you. And that's why Prabhupada said, cry. Allow yourself to experience that emotion. That will purify you. That will help you deal with it. So I think that's important.
Thank you for that. That is helpful for me to remember not to hide from the emotions, to run into them. That is so practical and helpful. We have another question. How do we respond to our own mental questionings, such as, why did Maharaj have to travel at this time during the pandemic, when strict guidelines are in place, and Maharaj could have waited a few more months?
Yeah, right. This question has been asked by many devotees, and it's also been answered in Prabhupada's books, and it's also answered by Prabhupada's own departure, because we were also asking the same question when Prabhupada left. Like, we're not ready. Why did Krishna have to take him? Not one devotee in ISKCON felt he was ready, and every devotee in ISKCON felt, if Prabhupada leaves, this is going to be a disaster for us, for the movement, the world, and the universe. So why at this time, when we're not ready, would Prabhupada go? And even Prabhupada's disciples were asking him, why are you going now? We're not ready. It's on everyone's mind. And then we're all praying for Bhakti Swami. So, we were all following, he's getting worse. Then a couple of days, it looked like he was getting better. And we said, oh, the chanting is working, he's getting better. And it's like, okay, all right, business as usual. I'm not going to think about this. Maharaj will be better. And then we find out he's getting worse. And then I think we kind of understood, if you're getting better and then you get worse and the next day is worse, it's not looking good with COVID. And everybody's chanting all over the world. Who knows how many thousands of devotees are chanting. And so then we could think, well, with all that chanting, certainly he's going to recover. And what we understand is that was not Krishna's desire. And it may not even have been Maharaj's desire. Those two things. You don't know what's in the heart of a devotee. And you don't know what's in the heart of Prabhupada and the heart of Krishna. In the case of Tamal Krishna Maharaj, he had come to a point in his devotional service where he wasn't sure what he was going to do. And at that point, he decided to go into the academic world and try to make a mark in the academic world, because no devotee had really made a huge mark, at least someone in his position as a sannyasi, and he really felt it was important. And he did that, and he excelled. He was like, he got all honors, and it was just amazing. And then for his dissertation, he was writing a book on Prabhupada, which would be like the definitive academic viewpoint of Prabhupada and ISKCON. And right before he finished, he took a break, he went to Mayapur, and then leaving Mayapur one day, he died instantly in a car crash. And one of the most immediate responses of most of the devotees was, Prabhupada has other service for him. That was like spontaneous, like top of the head. Prabhupada has other service for him. And then after that intuitive response, then you start reflecting. And the reflection was, he did everything. He did everything. He came to this point. He did this for Prabhupada. I would have to explain the whole history, but just to summarize it, due to circumstances, there really wasn't a place for him. And he didn't really have how should I say it in the polite way? He didn't have a good future in ISKCON. It was like he did what he had to do. He was in a position where it was like he was a general of the army, but he couldn't get a general post. It was like, what do you do now? The person who could transform ISKCON circumstantially is not in a position, or that maybe not even have the desire to be in that position. So a lot of the God brothers who knew him thought, yeah, he did what he had to do. There was nothing else. There was nothing else on the plate for him, and Krishna took him to go with Prabhupada. Prabhupada said, the great acharyas, they go and preach from one body to another to another. Have you heard that before? So they can be in the spiritual world, but they can be down here in the material world and go from life to life, preaching. Isn't that interesting? So a lot of times devotees may be saying this not as a Siddhanta absolute fact, but would say Prabhupada is preaching somewhere. And I think there's a lot of truth to that, because Prabhupada said he came down, and Prabhupada said, I had another life. In my past life, I was this. So how could you be eternally liberated and have a past life? Well, this explains it's possible. You could come down to spread Krishna consciousness and stay down in this form. And then Prabhupada said, when you go back to Godhead, I'll be there and I'll introduce you to Krishna. So it's like two places at once. Will we recognize you, Prabhupada? Yes, you will recognize me. And I will take you by the hand and I will put your hand in Krishna's hand. Okay, that sounds good. And I'll, so there is that idea. And so there is also that idea that, okay, I have a mission, Prabhupada, I have a mission. I need my men. I need my trusted associates. It's time for them to leave and go, right? That could be one reason. It could be the heart of that Vaishnava that actually, like in Tamal Krishna Maharaj's case, maybe he was thinking, I don't know what I'm going to do. I have nothing. And maybe there was this like subtle, maybe unconscious desire to like, okay, I've done it all. I don't need to be here. In Maharaj's 2012 Vyas Puja, it seemed he had that indication that, I really don't want to be here any longer. We know with Gaur Govinda Maharaj, that was the power of his death. He actually seems he had the Shakti to leave his body. He didn't want to be here for various reasons. So ultimately, we have to take it, and this is how Prabhupada explains it in his books, that this is the will of Krishna. In Prabhupada's last month or so, or 2 months, maybe month, he wanted to go to Govardhan. He just thought, he's dying. He said, but I want to go to Govardhan. So get a bullock cart and we'll go to, not even a car, a bullock cart. Prabhupada's dying. Prabhupada used to say, I'm only bones. If you want me to do it, you want me to go anywhere, you just have to keep bones with you. I'm a bag of bones. And now he wants to go to Govardhan, and he's telling everybody I'm a bag of bones in a bullock cart that bounces on potholes, and it bounces when there's no potholes? What are they? Potholes? Pot or pock? Potholes, right? Potholes, yeah, potholes. Pock marks are on the moon, right? Pock marks on the moon, potholes on the ground, yeah. And so Lokanath Maharaj, he says, okay, because he's in charge of Padayatra. He goes, okay, I have the carts, I have the bowls, we'll arrange it. And the other devotees are thinking, are you crazy? You're going to arrange this? Prabhupada will die if he goes on this cart. He can't survive a trip to Govardhan. It takes like 45 minutes by car to get to Govardhan. So by bullock cart, it must take 4 times as long or 5 times as long. It's like a whole day trip. You're going to take Prabhupada there and back. They were so upset. And so they had this debate. They said, but this is what Prabhupada wants. So how can I not do what he wants? How can I go against what he wants? I said, but if we do it, we'll be responsible for killing him because he can't survive. So they're having these meetings, and then the devotees are like, they can't sleep at night and they're going crazy. And they come to Prabhupada and they explain this to Prabhupada, that this is driving us completely crazy. If you go, you're going to die. We're your disciples. We have to do whatever you say, but please don't go. And Prabhupada said, okay, I don't want to create anxiety for you. I won't go. Then, so that was one situation. So everything seems good. And then the devotees are saying, but Prabhupada, you're a pure devotee, so you could ask Krishna to live. It's like, we don't feel ready for you to die. They just approach Prabhupada directly. Like, why do you have to go? Can't you just ask Krishna to say, extend your life. And so they were expressing all this anxiety and concern and lamentation all in front of Prabhupada. And at one point Prabhupada said, I forget the context. Unfortunately, I can't remember. It would be more dramatic if I remember the context. But it was something about don't go. And then at some point, Prabhupada, I think he sits up and says, okay, I'll stay. Which you can imagine how the devotees felt. It's like Prabhupada saying, almost like saying, I wanted to leave. The body's falling apart. I don't want to maintain it. But since you're so distraught and since you need me so much, I'll stay. And devotees are like, you can imagine, we need to make an actual major motion picture of this, because it would be like, your whole sari and choli would be wet. You would just be crying when you see this. This is like most emotional scene. Which is, it's just as a side point, it's so interesting that these people, they were going crazy thinking Prabhupada was going to leave. That's literally crazy. Bhakti Churu Swami, Tamakrishna Maharaj, Bhavananda Maharaj, they were taking care of Prabhupada, Hari Sari, the others. They were going literally insane, having to face this, what seemed inevitable reality that Prabhupada was leaving. And there are people who are so, I don't even know what the word is, confused, that they think those men had something to do with Prabhupada's dying and poisoning. It's like these people are practically dying thinking Prabhupada's going to leave, and they're the ones, well, they must be really good actors. If they're that great an actor, they should be in Hollywood, because they put on a good act, if that's really what they were doing. Obviously not. They were totally distraught, as were all the devotees. And so then we thought, well, Prabhupada's going to live. He said, like, I can live now. Okay, I'll do it. But what happened? Prabhupada said, give me something to eat, give me something to drink. And so they were starting to nurse Prabhupada back to life because he wasn't eating or drinking. So they were giving him things. And it was like, okay, the plan's in motion. Prabhupada's willing to live. Because the idea is, what seemed like to everyone is that Prabhupada's body was breaking down and he didn't have any will to live any longer. He didn't want to try to fix it or think it could be fixed. And he was just resigned to, we will fast to death and go. And the devotees finally got him to say, okay, I will stay. And so everybody thought, no, this is what happened. They were discussing this, and then Prabhupada said, Krishna's leaving it up to me. He put it in my hands whether I should live or die. Prabhupada said that. So when Prabhupada said that, obviously, what do you think the devotees said? Okay, Prabhupada, let us know what you decide. Of course not. Prabhupada, if Krishna is giving this to you, then how can you not take it? Because here are 100,000 reasons why we need you. And so Prabhupada does that, and everybody's thinking, okay, Krishna has given him the choice. He's taken the choice to live, but it may have just been a matter of a few days or a week. I don't know the details, but his health went down again. And that was confusing because he said, okay, I'll try to stay. And then at that point, the only thing you could understand is this is not Krishna's will. Krishna does not want him to stay. And from the material point of view, we're thinking, if he would have stayed longer, ISKCON would have been stronger. But ultimately, you don't know. You don't know. It could have been worse. Maybe that was the perfect time. When we were still young and energetic, maybe that was the time Prabhupada had to leave. Maybe we had to learn these lessons the hard way. Maybe we couldn't have, maybe if he left when we were 40, we would have thought we're smart, we know something. He left when we were 25, 30, we knew nothing. Maybe that was the best time. You don't know. You could speculate, right? You could say that. But ultimately, you're only trying to figure out what was Krishna's desire. Maybe Krishna wanted him to preach somewhere else. Maybe Krishna was missing him, wanted him to go back to Godhead. There's so many ways you can look at it, but ultimately, we never say that the devotee dies like an ordinary person, right? It looks ordinary. He died in a car accident. He died of a disease, but it's never like that. It's ultimately under, the devotee's life is at that point, that when you're that surrendered, your life is completely under Krishna's control. So whatever happens at that point is is Krishna's. You know, like Parikshit Maharaj. You remember what Parikshit Maharaj's logic? Parikshit Maharaj was cursed to die in 7 days. So he had the power to counteract the curse. He didn't have to die in 7 days, but he didn't counteract the curse. You know why? Because when he was in the womb, he was saved by Krishna. And he thought, if Krishna saved me in the womb, he wants me to die. Otherwise, he would have saved me, right? So you see in the life of a devotee how Krishna takes care of the devotee in so many situations so that the devotee can serve. You look at the life of Bhakti Charaswami. How well did Krishna take care of him? He was taken care of really well, wasn't he? Had so many loving disciples, and he was just like so unpretentious and simultaneously so aristocratic. You just look at him and go, okay, you need the best. You need the best car. You need the best room. It was just like that, you know? You just look at him and think, you need the best everything. And people who know me, they're like, well, you know, Mahatma Prabhu was very tolerant, so I just serve him an avocado sandwich because I didn't have time to cook. He's like, fine. He's like, and you look at me and go, yeah, you're from California. You're like a beach boy. You don't care. Avocado sandwich is like, you know, grew up with that. But you look at Maharaj and it's like, no avocado sandwich for you. So you look at him, you look at his life and you go, he was taken care of. He was served. He was appreciated. So therefore you think, if that's the case why he's alive, why would you think that this is some accidental fluke and now he's dying alone in the hospital and the envious people say, look at that, he's dying alone in the hospital. That's proof of whatever they want to blaspheme him about. This is like ridiculous things they want to say. And some devotees are saying, you know, he probably wanted to leave this world alone. As a humble, unpretentious person, that may have been something in his heart. Because you think, what? He's there alone, nobody can, maybe that was in his heart. I know two other stories of two devotees who died in accidents in Vrindavan. And later we found out in both cases, both of them expressed to other people they didn't want to live. They were young. Well, one was young, one was not so young. But they're just at this point in their life where they feel like, I don't fit in this material world. I just don't, you know, maybe they feel I'm not contributing so greatly to the ISKCON, and I don't fit in this material world. I'm not some big acharya going to save the universe. I just don't belong here. I don't want to be here. And both of them, I think within a few weeks of one another, died in accident. Like no pain, nothing. As soon as they knew they were hit, they were back with Krishna like the next second. And you look at this and go, what a horrible way to die. Not necessarily. It may be the easiest way to die because you die in a second rather than dying over months of cancer. That's hard. And all these people around you, don't go, don't leave us. You know, how painful is that? You know, and you don't have to deal with any of that. And, you know, maybe Maharaj in his heart felt like, I don't want to leave my body surrounded by people crying and telling me this is bad. And there was no one to surround him. Maybe that was his desire. You don't know. But you have to think in those terms that it's not material. It's divinely arranged. Because in the life of a devotee, you see everything in his life was divinely arranged. So why would at the end it be different, right? Well, now it's going to be different. No, it's not like that. And like devotees, when Tamal Krishna Maharaj died, devotees were thinking, Tamal Krishna Maharaj is like a very regal person. And everything he does it's very regal. And dying in a car accident is anything but regal, isn't it? It's kind of like, well, if you're going to die, that's kind of like, if you have 10 choices, that would be dying in an accident is kind of like, it's not, you know, he died on Sankirtan, distributing a book, he had a heart attack. Wow, put that on his samadhi, you know. He died jumping in the kirtan. He died giving class. He was traveling and preaching so much he had a heart attack and died giving Bhagavatam. I mean, that's glorious. Died in a car accident. It's like, you can't put that on the samadhi, you know. Can't put that on the tombstone. But devotees were saying that it was actually, it's just the nature of Tamal Krishna Maharaj. He was such a regal person that for his body to crumple and die over months, it's not him. It wouldn't work that way, you know, where this powerful general is now lying helplessly with no energy and his body's withering away. That's not his persona. That's not his brand. So he says the Krishna just took him away like easily. So if we don't think like that, we think, why did this happen? This doesn't seem right, isn't it? But when you look at it this way, you go more deeply and understand, well, everything is Krishna's arrangement. So it has to be for these devotees because their whole life is for Krishna. So let's understand in the context of their life and their desire and their service, why this happened. And that's how we should think about it. And ultimately, my daughter brought this question up. My daughter's 19. She brought this question up. Why did this happen? Right? She was thinking out loud. And she was talking and thinking out loud. And she gave the perfect answer. And that was the answer she gave. It's nothing, it cannot happen unless it's Krishna's desire. I was at that point questioning, why did Krishna allow this? I was really, this is like, what's going on here? Was this, like the questionnaire is asking, whoever was asking this, was it just that he made an unwise decision that he shouldn't have made? And that's why he died. Because I think some people, why did he have to go? It was a wrong decision. Why did he do that? But we see from the last lecture he gave before he left that his heart was in the field of preaching. And as one devotee said, he would much rather die in the field than stay in Ujjain and just, you know, eat pizza or whatever, you know. He'd rather go out and take the chance. And that's what he did. And he happened to give that lecture, which makes his death so glorious, because then everyone in the world can see he died not because he made a bad choice about COVID, but he died because his heart was on the battlefield and he had to be, and he was a general, he went out to fight. So then you get that example. The people who think wrongly, or the envious people, will think, oh, that was a wrong decision. He's not very smart. He shouldn't have done that. But then you understand it as it is and you see, no, his heart was in the field. And that's what prompted that decision. And that decision was coming from Krishna. And this was ultimately Krishna's teaching the world that the preacher wants to die in the battle. And he had dedicated his life to ISKCON, and he died in the process of dedicating his life to ISKCON, and we should do the same. And so there's a lesson there, right? And if we see it as Krishna's arrangement, then you put all the pieces together, it starts to make sense, doesn't it? One thing after another, after you go, wow. And the lecture's recorded. That's interesting. It's not every lecture necessarily is recorded. Well, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But anyway, he gave that lecture, and that was the most amazing lecture to give before you go somewhere to preach and then you leave your body because you went there. Now, some people say, you could say this, that simultaneously Krishna teaches many things, and what he taught all the preachers is don't go anywhere. So Maharaj wanted to leave this world. Krishna wanted to use him as an example of a soldier dying in the battlefield. And at the same time, he wanted to use him as an example that we need to be more cautious, because I think every preacher, when they got the news, just made a resolve. I'm not going in. I thought maybe I'd go next month here. I'm not going anywhere. It's too dangerous. So that's there also. At least that's how I see it. I mean, that not how I see it. That's the feedback I was getting. Even the GBC, they mentioned that. And say, it just shows how serious this coronavirus is. That Maharaj just one flight and he got it. You have to be careful. So you can learn so many things, but we never want to assume it's not Krishna's arrangement. That would be a mistake, right? Why did they have to take the taxi so early? Why do they have to have this driver? Why couldn't they have a different car? Nothing will make sense if it's Krishna's desire that it happens. Not that we don't use intelligence and common sense. Of course we should, but it won't make sense. Always. If we don't see it in a transcendental way. You know, why did Prabhupada have to leave so early? That makes no sense from the material point of view. Does it? And with all the devotees praying and Prabhupada a pure devotee, why wouldn't Krishna just mystically heal him? That's not what Krishna wanted to do. And when Prabhupada was dying, he said, you also will go through this. don't think you'll avoid this. And Prabhupada was being the acharya and teaching how to die. And we all went through this. Krishna, it's like almost like, that feeling when a loved one dies and you just like, you want to go to Krishna and go, why'd you do that? Come on, we got to talk about this, isn't it? You have that feeling like this is not fair. And you have to understand that there's a lot more going on than you can see, right? So that's how I take it. That's how I understand it.
I have another question, Prabhu, to follow up on
Okay.
what you gave me before, which I really appreciated that you encouraged not to try to feel differently, to go into the loss and the tears. And at the time that I lost my Vaisnava Pradakshika Guru, it angered me and upset me deeply when people would say, oh, but he's still with you, he hasn't left. I felt like so disrespecting him, it was disrespecting my grief process. And now we have the term spiritual bypassing, and it felt like that. And even today, so many years later, I still sometimes have that reaction. What would be the appropriate thing to say to somebody who makes such a comment? We don't want to be offensive, and at the
I
same
could tell you what I would tell them if I wasn't a devotee, but I can't tell you. Sometimes people, I'm in a situation and they'll say, you want to do this or that? And I say, well, because I'm a devotee this, if I wasn't a devotee that. It's always fun to like look at your life and desire and say, well, what I really want to do is this, but because I'm a devotee, I have to do that. Or what I really like to say is this.
I mean, it's understood that, of course, he's still with us, and I know that, and everything else.
Yeah. I could tell you what I would say. I would say thank you for that and just not think about it anymore, because it's not what I want to hear. And I always found that when I understand something, or I believe I've understood it in a way that I can confirm with other Vaishnavas, and in a way that is grounding and helping me, that if someone says something else, it's just like, okay, I don't allow it to affect me, because a lot of times I've heard people say, devotees, other people, I've heard them say some things, and it's like I see they have a very understanding of this topic, and I've like delved into it very deeply, and I understand why they said that, and within their context it's true, but within my context it's not, because I understand it in a different way. And that's happened to me a lot when I've developed seminars, and I've spent months and months and months understanding a topic, understanding like a forgiveness process, how it works, the emotions involved, the psychology. And then someone will talk about forgiveness in a very philosophical way, and everything they're saying is true. But some things come out and they're actually not true, because it requires more context, more information. So I just say, okay, that's within their context, it makes sense. And within my context, it doesn't. And I don't feel the need to like argue with them, or I think it's very important. This question, it opens up another issue. It's kind of a self-confidence issue, that if you've done something as best you can, or understood it as best you can, and other people don't appreciate it, do you allow that to affect you? Or do you just tell yourself, I did the best I could, and I'm satisfied because I know this is the best I could do. And if other people are not satisfied, I can take that in consideration. Maybe it's having an ill effect on them. But if it's not a relationship issue, or it's not like I was paid to do something and everyone's disappointed, then I just have to tell myself, I know I did the best I could do, and I'm satisfied with that, and be happy with that. And I think that's just a necessary survival tool, because there are always going to be people who, like I do sometimes, I'll do, if I do something with my music, there are certain people I will never give it to, because they're professionals and they're going to say, yeah, this, yeah, that. And I already know, yeah, this or that, but that's not my audience and that's not what I'm trying to do. But aside from that, I can't, the this and the that you want me to do, I can't do it. I don't know how to do it. I'm not capable. But I did my best and I did it with devotion, and I'm sad. And I listened to it and I'm like, I really like this. I'm satisfied. This was, I think I've got a message here. I've got some devotion here. And I think the music supports it. And it's not going to win a Grammy or anything. But my friend comes in, he's like, no, this. And I go, and that does happen to me. I go, I know, but I don't have the $20,000 for this or that in the next year to do it. So I think in life, sometimes we have to be that way. It's just like, okay, I understand that I'm going to be grieving. I may be grieving my whole life for this loss, and it's just a reality. And I understand the philosophy, and I know people will tell me, it's 7 years. Why are you still grieving? It doesn't make sense. What's wrong with you? You need some Prozac. What's going on? They'll say so many things. It's like, yeah, whatever. In your mind, well, that word, whatever? Sometimes we have to tell ourselves that he says, why are you lamenting? And in your mind, you just go, whatever. This person they won't understand me. I was just had a disciple, matching up astrology with another potential partner, and the astrologer said, "You will never understand one another." I was thinking, what if a guru and a disciple has that astrology? That's going to be a problem. But Kamini, have you ever met someone that doesn't understand you? If we send that message out and everyone will go, yeah, the person I'm married to. No, not necessarily. Sometimes the person you're married to understands you better than anyone. Sometimes they don't understand you at all. But there are definitely people who do not understand you, isn't it? And there are people who cannot understand you. It's impossible. They don't live in your world. And that's when the mantra whatever comes in really handy, because they say something that's so outlandish. You're like, okay, I understand the world you live in. It makes sense in your world. It doesn't make sense in my world. So I just say, thank you, Prabhu, for that. And in my mind, it's like, whatever. I have to stay true to what I know is true to me. Otherwise, I'll be pushed around by everyone. And, it's like sometimes, I'll ask someone, why don't you do it like this? Then they'll just go, it's not me, I can't. Or somebody, someone will see me and they say, oh, Prabhu, you're a good speaker and you talk about so many great things. Why don't you do something like Gaur Gopal or Jai Shetty? I go, because I'm not Jai Shetty, I'm not Gaur Gopal, and I'm not, and that's fine. They're great in their own right. And I'm great in my own right. And they don't have to be me and I don't have to be them. But when people say that, it can make you feel like, yeah, there's something wrong with me. I should be like them. Like my jokes aren't as good as Gaur Gopal's. Or I'm not as dynamic as Jai Shetty, or my topics aren't as relevant. You can just go down that road and drive yourself crazy, right? I sometimes I talk to my godbrother. I said, Radhanath Swami, he's so successful as a preacher, more of us should do that and follow what he's doing. And my godbrother says, he's Radhanath Swami, you're not. It's not going to come out the same way. And it's true. Someone says, you should preach like Radhanath Swami. It's like, yeah, but I'm not Radhanath. How do you do it if you're not him? How do you have that compassion and that mood if that's not you, right? But then I have a different mood. It may not be as good or what. It's just what I am, and so that's who I am, and I make peace with it. And then when people say you should do this, you should do that, it's like, thank you, Prabhu. And then when they leave, I chant the mantra, Om, whatever, Namaha. And then I'm fine. So it's kind of like, that's your new mantra coming in. Om, whatever, Namaha. You can make a CD. Chant that mantra. It'll be a big hit. Everyone will be chanting it. Maybe there's a mantra like that somewhere. Om Titikshava Namaha. Titikshava means tolerate, like the equivalent of whatever is kind of like the equivalent of like, it's not going to bother me. Kamaniya, in my class on humility, I give everyone a mantra, a similar mantra. And I said, all these things you can't tolerate, just tell yourself, that's interesting. You see some devotee and, they're eating prasadam on the stairway and it's all over their face and they're dhoti and they're blocking the stairway and they're talking to someone really loud. And you just want to say, what the is going on here? You just walk by and you chant your mantra. That's interesting. And that way you don't get so perturbed by it. So it's kind of the same mood. It's just like, there are going to be things in this world I don't like and I can't control. And I have to deal with it in a way that it doesn't harm my heart. I think this is so important. At least this is my personal experience. But just look at our position as initiating gurus. There's thousands of devotees that think we have totally offended Prabhupada by doing this. We've totally misunderstood Prabhupada and we should have never have done this. And we're actually destroying ISKCON by taking disciples. You know that? So you imagine you're a guru and there's thousands of people who think you are the biggest offender to Prabhupada. You are responsible for destroying ISKCON because you accepted disciples. How do you deal with that? You understand the philosophy. You understand this is what Prabhupada wanted. You understand everything. So when you hear that, it's just like you understand they're living in a different context. That's their world. It's not my world. And I am 100% certain this is what Prabhupada wants, and I can give you 108 reasons. And I could defeat every single reason they give. I could show how foolish it is, but I have to do it not for you. I have to do it for myself. And so that when I hear that, it's like, yeah, this Prabhu had some problems with some zonal gurus in 1980, and that's why he's like this now. I understand that. I understand his position. He's upset with problems gurus created. I totally understand it. I understand his context. But in terms of Prabhupada's desire and Siddhanta, he's off. And I'm convinced of that, and that's what motivates me to do this. And so it's just another whatever. It's another day in, ISKCON.
So then, Prabhu, according to Siddhanta, I can directly quote what you quoted before from the Srimad Bhagavatam, that Prabhupada said we should cry for a great Vaishnava.
Yeah. If you want, you're probably too polite to be that sarcastic. And you go, well, I prefer to follow this purport in the Bhagavatam. Yeah.
Thank you.
If you were an American, that's what you would say, but you're not American, so you won't say it. I love the British. They're so polite. Sometimes, even though I'm American, sometimes dealing with Americans is like, I was in England and, they're making the announcements. Dear Prabhus, we have a little problem. Someone is parked in a handicapped space and we need that. Could you be kind enough to remove it because we have other people coming who need that space? Then I go to a temple in America, and this is I'm not making this up. This is what happened. It's like the next week I come to a temple in America and I go, you're parking in a handicapped space and we're like fed up. We've made this announcement so many times. If you park there, we're just going to tow your car. It's going to be $400. And I just finished with this. I can't say anymore. And I'm like, oh my God, that's the difference between America and England. It was so funny. And you're thinking, no, Mahatma Prabhu, you're making that up. No, this is America. This is what Americans are like. So Kamaniya, in her own polite way, will say, Prabhupada said that we should cry, and it's purifying, and it's helping me. And thank you for your concern. That was a long answer. And now we've passed our time limit.
Yes, it's time to unfortunately call it at an end. So many comments pouring in saying thank you so much for this class. It's been so helpful. and there is one sort of question. It says here, thank you, Mahatma Prabhu, for taking the time to guide us at this difficult time and answering our questions. Some of us may be feeling carried right now by the flood of wonderful care and guidance from our god uncles and aunts, and numb by our loss, like I do. Can we write to you should we need guidance on a specific matter at a later time?
Yes and no. Yes, but don't take advantage. Otherwise, I won't have a life. Yeah, if you need help, you can write me. You'll say where, and I'll say, you have to figure that out. If I make it too easy, you'll all write like today, and I'll have 300 emails. Yeah. So.
Thank you for your honesty and openness. And
What I was just thinking,
giving us direction on this.
I was just thinking, we're going to do another class with you because this was a replacement for what we were going to do. But if you want, we can deal with some of these questions also, because the other topic is not a pressing topic and we don't need so much time on that topic. We were going to talk about men. Men are pretty simple. You could, just give a class take about 60 seconds to explain them. So that would leave us another 2 hours to continue this topic.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
So that's something we could, if you want to save these questions and comments, that we could continue if you wanted. And then we would go into the other class and discuss that. It's an important topic, but I don't think we would need necessarily all that.
Sharadia, are you trying to say something? We couldn't catch you there.
Hare Krishna, can you hear me now?
Yes.
So Prabhu, if you have more time this month, I think it would be wonderful if you could do another session where we address more of the questions that have been raised now. But I know your schedule is very full, but we would be, grateful if that is possible.
If I have time. You know my favorite song? Time I am
No,
not.
Prabhu.
Time I am not. Krishna says the time I am. Mahatma says the time I am not. Today is the 9th. Well, right now, the 13th or the 15th are okay. If you want something soon.
All right, thanks, Prabhu. I've noted that down. So the 13th or the 15th.
If you want something soon, yeah.
Okay, that's a Monday or a Wednesday. I will have a look on our schedule and then I will communicate with you.
After that, it would be the following Monday or Friday.
All right. Thank you. I will get back to you.
Okay. Well, it's nice seeing you all.
Thank you for giving us your time and for continuing to give us your time. And thank you, Sharadia, for being as organized as always. And thank you, dear Vaishnavis, for coming in. And I hope that you have received comfort and solace like I have during this difficult time. Hare Krishna.
Hare Bolo. Jai Prabhupada.
Haribo, Gurudev. Yeah.